Hello and welcome to finally another discussion video on this channel. Today I want to talk about time progression in From Software games, mainly in Elden Ring, but I'm using some of the previous From Software titles as some inspiration and for some examples. When I'm talking about time progression or time in general, I'm not talking about the day and night cycle that we have in Elden Ring. It's part of it. I will talk about it briefly, but what I mean is actual progression that you make in-game that is reflective or reflected in time in a sense. What do I mean by that? Let's start with some examples so you can wrap your head around it. Because saying time progression in Elden Ring, it's a very broad term. You can mean many things with that. Let's talk about some examples. First of all, generic quest lines of certain NPCs. If you progress the quest line, you're progressing time. A good example for that is also Bloodborne. Bloodborne has an amazing time progression system in place where when you beat certain bosses or achieve certain things, the world actually changes. The sky becomes darker, right? The night progresses. Then of course the day and night cycle that we have in Elden Ring is a completely separate entity to that. But the biggest example why I actually want to talk about this topic would be the shattering of Miquella's Great Rune in the newest DLC. When that happened, the shattering of the rune happens in two different areas, or can happen in two different areas, as far as I know. One is when you approach the Black Keep, the big black castle where Mesmer is inside, and once you go over the second bridge from Bonnie Village, I think it's called, right? It's called Bonnie Village. At these two spots there is a trigger that, well, triggers this one event where the gold rains from the sky, and it says a great rune has been shattered or something, whatever. And this was the one event where I really felt like, oh shit, something is happening in the game right now. Because usually when I play games like Dark Souls or Elden Ring, it doesn't really feel like time is progressing, at least not to me. Like everything has already happened and we're just visiting basically places that have been lived in, right? We're visiting in the future where the stuff already has happened, where you're just picking up the scraps, so to speak. Of course you have a storyline and it's progressing the game time, the in-game time, that's for sure, but it doesn't really feel like it doesn't really feel like it, at least to me. But once this rune shattered, I really get the sense of, oh, Miquella is actively going through the world, or through the Shadowlands, where I'm at right now, and doing stuff. It hasn't happened yet, right? He's actively doing this. And I didn't really get the feel of that before. Sure, you had these NPCs searching Miquella or following Miquella, but how much time has elapsed until they've seen Miquella the last time? Because he charmed them, right? So they must have met at some point in the past, but how long was that? Was it a year before? Has it been years? Has it been days or weeks or months? It's not really clear to us. But at this one moment, with the rune shattered, it's like, oh shit, it's the present. he's doing it right now, right? All these crosses that you've found in the DLC where it says this is the left eye of Mikola or whatever, right? Okay, sure. But when? How long was it here already? Like how much time has elapsed? Did he do that yesterday, or did he do that a year, or whatever? Right? It wasn't really clear to us, or at least to me. That's the feeling that I get. But once the room got chatter, oh, it's a present. And I kind of wanted more of that. I kind of want more of that, because it was a great feeling, honestly. Something is happening right now. Not just in the past. I kind of felt... not really rushed, but... like, things get more serious right now, because I'm used to things like, okay, the game is waiting for me, and sure, the game was waiting for me back then too, right? It's literally just a trigger, just a spot where when you walk over it, this shit gets triggered. But NPCs reacted to that as another big aspect, right? The NPCs all of a sudden all had different dialogue. They felt the change in the world. They felt the charm wearing off. That was a great feeling, honestly. Like, something happened, something meaningful happened, and NPCs are reacting to it. The world is reacting to it. I didn't get that feeling when Melina burned the Earth Tree, or when we burned the Earth Tree as the Lord of Frenzy, like in the Forge of the Giants, like the big bowl of fire after the Fire Giant, when Melina starts burning the tree, or in some cases the player starts burning the tree. Sure, there are few NPCs, I guess, not even reacting to that. Maybe Sir Gideon Ofnir, I'm not really sure, and like Enya, but the rest, no one's reacting to it. Nothing really changes in the world other than this one burning tree. But no enemy changes, no... like, sure, we're getting Farum Azula as a new area, but that also kind of felt weird. We fell asleep, and then all of a sudden we're in Farum Azula. It kind of feels disconnected, and there isn't really that big of a change in the game. Now let's compare that to Bloodborne, a previous game that they've... that's already way older than Elden Ring, right? And they had this nice night progression system where you're going, where you're basically just doing everything in one night, right? The time it takes for the story to unravel is one long nightmarish night, right? And of course time is being distorted in Bloodborne because it's not a naturally occurring night, right? So cosmic stuff is happening there, so the night gets elongated. It's basically one big nightmare, right? But once you've... I still remember that moment when in the Cathedral Ward we're going through that big gate towards Vicar Amelia. I fight Vicar Amelia, and all of a sudden it's night. It's not evening, like the sky was red before, or reddish before. Now it's like night. It's dark. And all of the enemies, like the big enemies, the giants, the church giants or whatever they're called, they're sleeping now. Like, stuff happens, and all of the NPCs had different dialogue now. Like, they progressed, their stories progressed just because I've beaten a boss. That was an amazing feeling. And then during certain different times, you had completely different enemies all of the sudden. Not completely different enemies, but when we go back to Hemwick Charnel Lane, I think is the name, Like you had at some point these big creepy dudes spawning all over the game, and then you had the mechanic with the inside. The more insight you had, the more weird stuff you could see and comprehend, and that felt really, really good. Like the story unraveled, and sure, Bloodborne is a different game, but I kind of wish we had some more of these things where the world actually reacts to that in Elden Ring itself. The other big thing that we had in Elden Ring is like Ashen Capital, Leyndell, right? Leyndell, Ashen Capital, whatever the name of that is, where Leyndell actually changed big time once you were done with Farum Azula, once you've claimed the Rune of Death. But even after claiming the Rune of Death, nothing really changed, except for Leyndell. You could not go through Leyndell like normally. Sure, you could get into certain areas you couldn't get in before, but the impact wasn't there, for me at least. It was completely different than Bloodborne or the Miquella experience here, the Miquella's Great Rune experience, where there wasn't like a oh shit moment. Sure, there was an oh shit moment, but not that oh shit moment that I wish I had. So why is that? Why is that? That's my big question. Of course, map changes. Then NPCs reacting to that is another big thing. Maybe enemies even reacting to that. But I feel like doing all of that stuff, like changing the enemies, reacting to the new stuff, or even putting a new set of enemies in the level, NPCs reacting to certain things, it feels a bit more disconnected in Elden Ring than it felt like in a game like Bloodborne, right? But that's partially because of the open world. That's one of the downsides to an open world. If you really, let's say burning the Earth Tree, or let's take burning the Earth Tree as an example. Everyone can see the Earth Tree, right? No matter where you are in the lands between, you're seeing the Earth Tree. But having new sets of enemies or enemies reacting to that differently wouldn't make any real sense, right? Because you've already gone through the level. Why would you backtrack all of the sudden? Like, the player's not even going to... Let's say all of the soldiers are reacting to that. They're getting crazy or something. Like, that doesn't matter, because you're not going to see that. Right, you've been to Limgrave, you've been to the Altus Plateau. You're not going back there to re-experiencing that moment. So doing that in a game like Elden Ring is much harder to achieve, right? To achieve this phenomenon. It's much easier to do with NPCs, like we've seen in the DLC, Shadow of the Earth Tree, where all of the NPCs that you've met got new dialogue, got a change of heart, right? Doing it with a few NPCs, it's much easier than to do it with almost every single enemy that has something to do with the Earth Tree, right? Sure, you could say, like, something to circumvent this is, for example, let's take Leyndell again. You now all of a sudden unlock a new area to the game, or maybe there are some minor changes in Leyndell and a story reason to revisit Leyndell, and later on, of course, you have a reason to revisit Leyndell, and then change that legacy dungeon a bit, so that there are now new enemies or different enemies that react to the burning of the Earth Tree in a different manner. Of course, all of that would also be easier to achieve. Like, it's easier to achieve that when you're not having zombie enemies, basically. Like, the majority of humanoid entities in Elden Ring are zombie-like enemies, right? They're seemingly mindless. Like let's take the common soldier of Godric. It doesn't really feel like that there's much thought behind them, and they look already rotten. Right, having a still intact organization like that would be, of course, a more easier. What do I want to say here? Like having them still be conscious would be, of course, easier to achieve than the effect that I wanted. But let's say we have that. You could change Leyndell in a way where you have to revisit. Maybe you have to go through the dungeon again, but this time it looks a bit different because already some of the tree or some of the ash has gathered, and maybe there's an entirely new quarter to explore to the city, right? You have to take a different path, and now all of the still sane or still somewhat sane soldiers and such are hunkering down because they want to protect their king and whatever, right? They want to protect the Earth Tree from the traitor that we are, from the sinner that burns the tree. That would be kind of cool. And it's still a bit more difficult in an open world game, and in a game like Bloodborne it's much easier to achieve because you have a smaller surface area. You can more easily unlock new areas to explore for the player. It's much easier to achieve that the player has to backtrack. Well, that is one of the upsides of having a let's say more linear game. It's not really linear, more legacy dungeon-esque kind of game rather than an open world game, because you can actively control the player's movements through the levels. In an open world game it's not that possible. Sure, you can put in some roadblocks here and there, or bottlenecks, I should say, to achieve that, but other than that it's much harder. And now let's talk a bit about the day and night cycle that we have in the game, which is completely different to what I actually want to talk about, because sure, a day and night cycle hints at time progressing, or actually time flowing. It's not really progress that has been made with the change of day and night, but still with a day and night cycle you can achieve other great things. So let's talk about that. What can you do with a day and night cycle? Well, the easiest thing come to mind, which is already in the game, is like you have different enemies during the nighttime than you have during the daytime, and that's partially true. You have for example, the Knight's Cavalry roaming around in search of the player. I think there are also a few death birds that can spawn, but no, it was during nighttime, right? Death bird only appear at night? Oh, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just some death birds, I don't know. I could swear some of the death birds also appear during daytime, but maybe that's false. It's been some time since I've last played Elden Ring for real. Like, not only for the Roads of Elden Ring series, but for real. So I'm missing some details here and there. But sure, we have certain enemies that only exist during nighttime, but the NPCs aren't really reacting to the nighttime or the day and night shift, and there's not really a big difference. Alright, some of the bats are Oh, it's only there at night, or during the nighttime, right? There are some enemies that change, but overall it's a fairly underutilized thing. Imagine there's a level that would only appear during nighttime. Or maybe only during daytime. Maybe it's a sun castle and a moon castle or whatever, I don't know. I'm just coming up with that because I was thinking about this invisible tower in the Altus Plateau in the forest with all the corona victims, the dudes that are coughing all the time. What are they called? Worm faces, right? Where you had to find the 3 sigils to unlock this one wizard tower. Imagine having something like a structure that only becomes visible during nighttime. That would be kind of cool. Of course, once you're in the castle, it's constantly night and stuff like that. But that would be kind of sick. Well, maybe if you're, or maybe it just is invisible to the outside during daytime, but once you're inside you can see that would be kind of cool concept. But still, it has nothing to do with time progression itself, right? Because again, coming back to the time progression itself, or game progression, with the feeling of sensing time or something, I don't know how I want to call it, but coming back to that topic of time progression, you don't even really feel that with storylines in the game, because they're all so disconnected from each other. And that's not even a Elden Ring exclusive. That's the thing in almost every Souls title as well, at least how I feel about it. It's like yes, you're progressing storylines of certain NPCs, but the changes that are happening in the world are too contained to that one NPC, so that it feels like you're not changing anything. For example, completing the quest line around fear, right? The ultimate goal is to get that mending rune of death or whatever, right? But it doesn't really feel like you're changing anything by completing that quest line. Sure, you're unlocking ultimately a new ending, but other than the affected NPCs like Roger, Fia, D, and the brother of D, I think other than these 4 NPCs, nothing really changes. No enemy changes, like undead are not all of the sudden friendly towards you, or they're on your side all of the sudden, or something weird like that. There's no big change, or maybe it progresses the corruption of the overworld, and when you finish that quest line, there is even more deathroot lying around, and there are no new areas that you can unlock, or that you have unlocked more minor dungeons that are now open because of the influence of the Prince of Death, right? It also helps, it also does not help that there is no after game, like no post game kind of thing, because in many games you have a post game, right? You've beaten the big bad, you've mended the rune, the Elden Ring or whatever, it's repaired, and now you can revisit certain thing. No, that's not a thing, right? The story is over. You're Elden Lord. Marika is like, honestly, who's the Elden? No, who's the god? After most of the endings, is it still Marika? I mean, in one Rani can be the new god, but is it still America when we're doing Fierce Quest, for example, or the Dung Eater quest, the Dung Eater ending, or the perfect golden order ending? Is it still America, or is there? I don't even get the story right now, but there's no no post game after credits scene. I wanted to say that makes no sense. There's no post game in Elden Ring, which is good, I guess, because I don't really want to revisit I kind of want to do. If you've played Dragon's Dogma 1, like Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen, whatever, when you finish the game, spoiler alert, if you haven't played Dragon's Dogma 1 and still want to play it, please skip the next like 30 seconds or so. You've been warned. But after beating the final boss there, you're basically God, the god of the game. And what you can do as a post-game, quote-unquote post-game thingy, is you can wander around as a ghost through your starting village. It's not a big thing, but it would be kind of cool to see what happened, what's happening after your victory, right? After becoming Elden Lord. It would be kind of cool to see what's like the repercussions of that. What's the end result? Sure, we are getting this dude narrating stuff, but we don't really see what's happening, right? And it makes it feel ultimately a bit inconsequential. Like, our choices are inconsequential. And I think that is also a big thing. There are no real big consequences to certain things. Like, imagine just being one of Rykard's followers. Right, you're joining the Volcano Manor and you're doing all sorts of things. You're not really progressing the plot with that. You're progressing the individual questline and you're getting rewards here and there, sure, but ultimately you're affecting only a few NPCs. Not just the world. Like, just a few NPCs. You're doing nothing, basically. Nothing is happening, there is no impact, and thus it doesn't really feel like your time is progressing. At least that's the feeling for me. So, I guess a small conclusion for me at least, you might feel about that completely different, and that's fine. I would like to know your opinion on that matter, and how it feels to you, how time progresses in these games for you. Because for me it's not really a thing, but I guess my conclusion would be that quest lines are too inconsequential for them to feel like they're actually doing something in the world. They're not progressing the world. There's no progress whatsoever in the world. You're just going through a world that has ended, and you want to rebuild it, but there is no rebuilding during your playtime. There's no change during your gameplay, only before the player starts their journey, and after the player has finished their journey, it is where time all of the sudden starts again, right? You have so much lore from before the game starts, and you have some lore, not much, from what ultimately happened when you do certain things. But you don't see the change, you don't feel the change in the gameplay. There is no change whatsoever, and thus it feels like to me that there is no progression of time. But I think I think that's it. That would be my conclusion. So that would be the end of this video. I've Nothing really more to say about this topic. At least not right now. I'm pretty sure once I go to bed today or something, during some other downtime, I'm coming up with like, oh, I should have said this and that. And yes, sure, I'm writing it down. Maybe your comments will keep me thinking again, or get me thinking again about this topic. And I really want to discuss this, so I'm open for a second video where I'm involving the theory, even with your theories or with your opinions on it. It's not really theory, it's more like opinion-based stuff and how it feels to a certain person. And I would like to know your opinion on that, and your feeling. Did you have... what was it like the same for you when the Great Rune shattered from Mikela? All of the sudden, like, oh shit, it's happening right now. I want more of this. Or was it like, oh, it shattered, I hope I didn't break any quest lines once again? Was it an immersive thing for you, or was it like, cool, I guess. My frames are dropping. Let me know what you think about this topic, and I guess that's it from me. See you in the next video. Goodbye.